School District Budget for Monday, October 27th, 2025 to order. Again, our notice is we are live streaming as well as members of the public are welcome to attend our meetings. I will have Nicole do the roll call and verification of quorum, please.
Ms. Bushman?
Here.
Ms. Mercer?
Here.
Mr. Kowalski?
Here.
Mr. Pope?
Here.
Mr. Liebrick?
Here.
Ms. Erler?
Here.
Ms. Potter Nelson?
Here.
Mr. Summers?
Here.
We have a quorum.
And we have one member who's on the way and should be with us momentarily. So we will move into the public hearing portion, and we will be having a presentation of the budget overview by Mike.
Good evening. Welcome to the 2025-26 budget hearing. The presentation I'm about to give is 20 slides. I'm going to try to do 20 slides in 20 minutes. So some of them will go through a little faster than others, but just keep in mind I'm trying to keep up that pace. The budget book that you have is the meritorious format that Tom provided you a couple of years ago. I'm using that same format. It does have 4 sections. There's a lot of stuff in that book, a lot of good stuff, but there's a lot. So as we go through this presentation, I will refer to page numbers. I'm going to just put it in the bottom left corner of each slide if you want to look back in the budget book. But otherwise, you can follow along in your board packets as well. Let's get to the first slide. If you look at the first slide, you can see this is on page 10 of your budget book if you did want to follow along using that book. But again, you don't have to. So if you look at the top table, so we'll just start there. We have all the different funds going down the left-hand side. Get rid of that. And then we have an expenditure column, a revenue column, and a tax levy column. So the revenue plus the tax levy equals the total revenue, which is down here. And that total revenue for all funds is $151,326,417. The total expenditures for all funds is $153,517,567. So the total expenditures are a little bit more than the total revenue, and you'll see why that is as we continue in the presentation. The tax levy for 25-26 is $50,084,840. That is a 16.39% increase. This year's equalized valuation is $7.2 billion. That's a 7.2% increase. Now, the state average is 8%, so we actually are a little under the state average in equalized valuation increase. The 25-26 levy rate is $6.94. That's up 54 cents from last year, which is an 8.44% increase. Note that the referendum levy estimate was $6.96, so we're still a couple cents below that estimate. Okay, so why is the tax levy going up? There are 3 main reasons. The first reason is, and I keep hitting this button as I'm pushing this mouse around. The first reason is a reduction in state aid. So if you look at the table, over the last decade, we've seen an increase in state aid for each year, on average of 5.13% per year. In fact, in the last 2 years, state aid's increased by 8.53%. Then this year, we're actually seeing a reduction, a loss in state aid of 1.03%, or $577,689. So that's one of the reasons why the tax levy is going up. Another reason is private school vouchers. So for this year's budget, the private school voucher levy is almost $3.8 million. That's an increase in 13.8%, or $459,352. So if we combine the reduction in state aid to the increase with the increase in private school vouchers, back up, with the increase in private school vouchers, we're up to almost $1 million right there. And then if you really want to think about it a little bit, if we would have got an increase like we got last year's increase was about $4.4 million in state aid. And if you combine that with our reduction in state aid and our private school voucher increase, we're talking about $5.4 million. So obviously the state aid reduction and the private school vouchers is impacting our levy. The third reason why the tax levy is going up is the operational referendum. So this is the first year of the full impact of the operational referendum. Even with state aid going down though, the actual impact is less than the projected impact. So, come on in, Jim. Yeah.
Bienvenidos. You must go slower than Nick.
Okay, so for 24-25, the projected mill rate was $6.83. By the way, when I say mill rate, that's the levy rate. Sometimes I'll say one and not the other. Sorry about that. I don't want to confuse you, but I just do that sometimes. But the mill rate was projected to be $6.83 last year. It ended up being $6.40, so it was less. The mill rate for this year was projected to be $6.96. It's ending up being $6.94, so it's a little bit less. The impact on a $100,000 home over those 2 years was projected to be $91. The actual impact based on what the current mill rates came in at is actually $24. So again, even though we saw a loss in state aid, which was big, the actual impact is less than what we projected with the mill rate. I did take some strategies to reduce the levy. We applied $341,000 of interest that we had earned in our debt service fund, Fund 39. We applied that to reduce the levy. We also applied $428,000 of Fund 80 fund balance, that's our community service fund, to also reduce the levy. So combined, we were able to reduce the levy by $769,000. Okay, let's take a look at the actual budget. So we'll start with the general fund, and we're gonna focus on the 25-26 budget column. The other columns are the actuals, but we're looking at the budget. So if you look at total revenues for the general fund and total expenses for the general fund, they match. So we have a balanced budget, but we also are committed to rebuilding our fund balance. So what we did is we proactively budgeted $1.5 million to fund balance. So it's actually in an account. So instead of waiting to see how things shake out at the end of the year, we budgeted in an account so that we can really work on that. So that 1.5 million is part of these expenditures right here. Okay. Then we have the special projects fund, that's Fund 21 and Fund 27. Fund 21 is primarily donations. Fund 27 is our special education fund. That fund is balanced. Then we have our debt service fund. This is Fund 38 and Fund 39. Fund 38 is non-referendum approved debt. Fund 39 is referendum approved debt. And if you look at the revenue and expenditures for that fund, you'll see that revenue is less than expenditures. The reason for that is because we use some interest to help levy a little bit less. Oh, that worked. All right, then we have the capital projects fund. That's our Fund 46. So that's the fund that supports our 10-year capital improvement plan. That fund, we have more planned expenditures than what we have in revenue. We do have fund balance to cover those planned expenditures, but we do want to maintain that fund. So that's something we have to think about as we move forward, trying to maintain that fund for future projects.
And that fund does get reimbursed at half, correct?
It gets what?
Reimbursed, so we spend it and we get reimbursed from the state?
not for
50%?
that fund. That's kind of like a savings account.
Oh, which fund do we get reimbursed for spending for capital projects? I thought there was a building fund we got reimbursed for. No?
Uh-uh.
Oh, okay.
No, but I mean, you do to some extent, Alex, because when you spend money, it's aided by the state, so you get that state reimbursement in the next year. So maybe that's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Food service fund, that's our Fund 50. That fund, the revenues match the expenditures, so that one's balanced. The trust fund, we no longer have that fund. It's only in here because there's part of it's in another part of the budget book, so it's on that same page. I think this is page 11 of your, or page 12 of your budget book. The community service fund, that's Fund 80. On this fund, you can see that revenues are less than expenditures. And again, that's because we applied some fund balance to try to reduce the levy. So that's the overall picture of the budget. We can go into a little more detail. I'm gonna go through these slides kind of fast. There's a lot of detail here. So this is revenue by source. So source is where the money is coming from. Okay, so on this slide, we have all the source, keep clicking that, all the source codes on the left. We have their descriptions next to them. So again, this is telling you where the money is coming from. We have the funds going across the top, and then the totals in each column for each fund at the bottom. And so that total for all funds, again, is 151,326,417. That's the same as that first slide, or that initial slide, which is really actually the third slide in the presentation. But that's the slide that we're gonna come back to at the end. All right, next. Expenditures by object. So this is set up the same way. So here are the major objects going down the left side. Object is telling you what you're spending the money on. And so 100 objects are salaries, 200 objects are benefits, etc. Across the top are the funds again. The totals for each column are at the bottom, so for each fund. And then the overall total for all funds, 153,517,567. We can also give expenditures by function. So function is where the money is being spent. So for example, the 120,000 function, that is your regular curriculum. So 124,000 is actually mathematics. So if you are buying a pencils in mathematics, you're gonna use 124,000 in your coding. Here are the descriptions for each of those different functions. Again, that's where the money is going to. And then we have our funds going across the top, our totals for each column and each fund on the bottom. And then our grand total is 153,517,567. And in case you haven't noticed this, this is page 38 in your budget report book. All right. So next we move on to the revenue limit worksheet. The revenue limit worksheet is how we determine the levy. So this is the first page of the revenue limit worksheet. What's important to point out here are these numbers. These are your 3-year rolling average, so your FTE for students. Those numbers are important because that determines our revenue limit authority. However many students we have times the revenue limit per member gives us our revenue limit authority. And that's going down. So we are experiencing declining enrollment. We're down 67 FTE in those 3-year rolling averages, which means our revenue limit authority is going to be decreasing over time if we continue to decline. Okay. In the first year, we get saved a little bit. There is a declining enrollment exemption here, and I know this is really small, so you might want to use your packet to be able to see some of this. But there's the declining enrollment exemption. That's good for 1 year. After that, it's gone. Okay. Then we go on to the second page of the revenue limit worksheet. This is the one that's really fun. There's lots of calculations on this page that determines our levy. So let's just start at the top. I'm gonna actually go to line 3 at $12,574.25. That's our base revenue per member. Okay, then that's carried over from the previous year. So that means that our referendum from last year is in that number. Okay, then we add on the $325 and we get a new base membership of $12,899.25. We take that times our 3-year rolling average, and that gives us our revenue limit with no exemptions. Okay, over here we have our exemptions. These are our recurring exemptions. We have a little bit of transfer of service, and then we have our referendum for this year, the $5.25 million. Those are totaled right here. That gets added into the revenue limit with no exemptions, and now we're at about 96 million. Then we take our non-recurring exemptions, that's these here. So in the non-recurring exemptions, you can see line H and I. Those are our private school voucher amounts. So we don't have any control over those amounts, that's just what they are. Okay, and so then we get we add those in and we get our revenue limit with all exemptions. From there, we're gonna subtract out state aid. State aid is added over here. So here's our state aid certification that came out October 15th. That's the amount that's 1.03% less than last year. Okay, and then we have some exempt computer aid and some personal property aid that also gets added in. We subtract that from our revenue limit with all exemptions. We get the revenue limit less general aid here. Okay, these are our levy amounts in red. So our Fund 10 levy is $43,907,298. And then we have our non-referendum debt of $2,070,100. Those total is $45,977 up here. Okay. Then we have our other levies. We have our Fund 39 referendum approved debt levy. And again, that's lower than what it would have been because we used some interest. We have our community service fund levy, again, also lower because we used some fund balance there. And then we have our prior year chargebacks. And so that gives us a total levy of $50,084,840. That's even getting small for me to read. That then gives us our levy rate of $6.94 per thousand. So that's how the levy is calculated. Now, the way the levy is distributed to municipalities has to do with equalized value. Okay. So this table gives us the equalized value from last year compared to this year and the percent change. Okay. So we know our equalized value went up by 7.2%. That's for all of our municipalities, but by municipality it varies. So some municipalities went up more than 7.2%. If that happens, they're gonna have a larger share of the levy. Some went up less than 7.2%. They're gonna then have a smaller share of the levy. Whiting actually went down 10%. So that's the only municipality where equalized value went down. The next section has, whoa. There we go, sorry about that. Okay, the next section, we have the change in levy by municipality. So we have our 2024 levy, 2025 levy, the levy change, and then the percent change. So the overall levy was 16.39%, but depending on equalized value, a municipality may pay a little bit more than that or a little less. So this table shows the change in levy by municipality from last year to this year. Okay, here's that screen again. This is just showing the total levy. I put this on here just to kind of talk a little bit about how we get that. So this levy is determined by the revenue limit worksheet, that's what we went through. And then from there, the levy is portioned among the 18 municipalities within the school district according to each municipality's percent of equalized property value. And this process ensures equal and fair distribution of levy among all parties. That's the purpose of using equalized value. It's also important to note that the voucher levy is included in this total levy. So in this column here, the voucher levy is also in there. Brings me to the next slide, which is the voucher levy by community. So our voucher levy is about 3.8 million. That's divided up by municipality, again, by using those equalized values. Of our total levy, 7.6% of it goes to vouchers, not to the school district. And again, the voucher levy increased this year by 13.8%. Okay, we're coming back to one last impact slide. So this time I took a $200,000 home. And so you can see that for the $200,000 home, the mill rate of $6.94 has an impact of $108. So double what the $100,000 home had. One of the other things I wanted to show you on this slide though is that from 22-23 on, we've had a levy rate less than $7. Prior to that year, we've been over $7. We've even been in the $8 range. So we managed to keep the levy rate below $7, and it's going to stay below again this year. Okay, looking ahead. We want to keep thinking, we want to be mindful that we are experiencing declining enrollment. So we want to be thinking about that as we move forward. So fully utilizing our revenue limit authority allows us to offset future challenges while protecting core programming. We also want these funds to last, so we have to continue our ongoing evaluation. We've been doing that, and this year we identified $811,000 in savings for 25-26. We anticipate further reductions as we continue to evaluate program usage information. So this proposed budget reflects strong stewardship of community resources with a focus on students and also in maintaining these funds for a really long time. And that brings me back to that first slide, the tax levy summary. That's the slide that had a lot of information on it. It's where we started, it's where we're going to end. The total levy again is $50,084,840. The levy rate is $6.94. That rate is a little bit less than what we had projected with the referendum. And that's the end of my presentation.
I feel like we need a clap or something.
Good job.
I'm just gonna remind board members, this is the public hearing portion. And so this presentation was to us, but it was to the community.
Yep.
And so we are now going to move into the public comment portion of this. And do we have any email comments? No. And do we have anybody signed up with comments tonight? Is there anyone here this evening who would like to speak about the budget to the board? There is no one. So I will now be looking for a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Okay, second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Now we'll move into the special school board meeting agenda. We're noting again that public access to meeting is streaming, as well as anyone from the community can be present for our meetings. We need a meeting opening and roll call, please.
Ms. Bushman,
Here.
Ms. Mercer.
Here.
Mr. Kowalski.
Here.
Mr. Pope.
Here.
Mr. Liebrick.
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
Ms. Potter Nelson.
Here.
Mr. Summers. Mr. Lepak.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're moving into item 4, approval of the 2025-2026 budget and levy. I would look for a motion on that and a second, and then we can have discussion as a board.
So moved.
Motion to approve and a second. So, motion by Jen, second by G. Any discussion, questions from members of the board with respect to the budget that is in front of us tonight?
Can I ask, these numbers now are for this school year till July 1st. So the whole purpose is to hit those numbers if we can. It's a guide, right? So it doesn't mean we will or not, but
Right,
to-
and Mike will continue to provide his monthly updates at Business Services where he gives us a projection on where we're at, how we're doing, where are some places that he might be concerned about, places that we're underspending, overspending. So this is our goal, and hopefully we'll be able to meet the expectation.
is
Well,
there-
and the reality is, G, the state aid, we're gonna be provided with the state aid.
Yep.
As the state, they've told us the number, and we are going to levy the amount, or if we approve this, we are going to be levying the amount that Mike is proposing.
Mhm.
And then we will be working with this budget over the course of the remainder of this year, to be efficient about what we're spending dollars on, to try, as administration with Mike's help last year did, to bring us in under budget at the end of the year, so that we again continue to have that ability to move forward, as you said, Mike, especially with the declining enrollment that we're seeing.
So this is no longer the numbers are wrong, this is wrong, this is actual.
Is there any way to gauge the effect of the government shutdown as it moves on? Is there any way to gauge the money that's available to us throughout the year from the federal?
Sure, so I'll speak to that and then I'm gonna turn it over to Mike. So what we've learned to date is that this year will not be affected because those dollars were already allocated to the Department of Public Instruction for release to districts. But starting in June, July of 2026, there could be some potential impacts. So we don't know what that will be yet, but we know that there could be some potential
So
impacts.
we're as sure as we can be because money has been called back. That was already allocated. So I just wanted, I know it's impossible to say.
Yep,
So
but
we just live.
for
with
this
what we
year,
got.
we're feeling good about it. For next year, we're not sure.
That's what I was gonna say.
Thank you.
And Corey also is going to, this week,
Mhm.
provide an email out to the board. We've had some questions about food share, about how families can access resources. We've had some questions about the fund that the district has put together to allow families to support our kids who can't afford our lunch or breakfast programs. And so Corey's gonna put an email out to all of us with information, as well as get an email out to all of the families in town. Nonprofits have recently kind of pulled together what their projections are, what contact numbers are, information that we will share out to families. But I think the reality is, if there are families in this community struggling, and they have any questions whatsoever, they should reach out
Yep.
to Corey, to the district, to see how we could help.
Absolutely.
Do you wanna talk a little bit about the food the backpack program?
Sure, so most of our schools have a backpack program where they send food home with families in need. That's in cooperation with a lot of other community organizations like Boys and Girls Club, Woodlands Church, and families that just donate to each school to provide food for those backpacks. We've received a wealth of information from the community on resources where people can go. And we'll include that in the email out to families and to the board. So that, what we know is the Food Shares program ends at the end of this week. So they're not affected through October, but starting November 1, families will be affected.
But any money currently on the card will still be available to use, because there was news articles out that said they wouldn't be able to use that money. If that money has been allocated and it's on your food share card, that's money still accessible, just,
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
okay.
And I will say, we still have community members that are donating to our Money for Meals program. So students that may have a negative lunch account balance, we've got individuals and community members and businesses that are donating to that account to help pay for those negative food balances. And we appreciate that greatly. If anyone wants to continue to donate to that, they should contact the business office.
Okay, I have some questions.
Yeah, okay.
So looking at the budget, again, right now we have 60% of our budget going to staff and faculty. While I understand that staff and faculty, of course, are our bedrock, 60% is a high percentage rate going to faculty and staff. Right now, we're looking at 3 to 4% for inflation rate. What?
CPI.
CPI, that was the word. Thank you. Inflation was all I could come up with.
Same.
So with that in mind, how are we budgeting for future staff and faculty when already 60% of our money is going to staff and faculty?
Can I ask before we do that, how are we compared to other school districts?
We would have to pull that information, but I would venture to guess that we are not far off from other districts. In fact, I've seen districts that have been up to 80% of their budget.
Salary and
For
benefits
salary and
are always
benefits.
gonna be,
Good.
yeah, at the top.
Could that be given
Sure.
to us in
I think it would be
email?
helpful, but I know that it's always high. But with another potential 4%,
Yeah.
how are we budgeting for that? Look, based on the numbers that we're potentially voting on tonight. Because I wanna make sure that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot or being fiscally unwise or whatever. So I have 3 questions, but that's my first one.
Sure. So the money for salary and benefits for this year was already budgeted for once the board made the decision to give the salary and benefit increases last spring.
Okay.
So those are accounted for. So any potential going forward, the board would take action on that in the spring again, once we find out the CPI, which happens in January, I believe. And then we would make a decision there. Whatever the board decides would then again be accounted for then next year.
Okay.
And with the ongoing budget evaluation and looking at the programming and looking at enrollment, I mean, hopefully we're staying on par with, if enrollment sadly continues to decline, FTE would then follow suit. Am I? Yeah.
Correct.
And that's what we've identified up to this point, and I think Corey would account for that in the salary proposal that she pulls together and brings to the board in April too.
Right.
So we would keep a close pulse on those numbers.
Well, and of course, to add to that, we are looking at the current study that we're working with consultants with respect to our enrollment projections. That information, we're
November.
looking at November, potentially to be able to bring before the board in November, to begin a look at that. A look at how are, not just the enrollment projection, I mean, what happened this year, but what are we gonna be seeing within the next 5 years, within the next 10 years? And how can we best align our district to be able to be fiscally responsible about that reality? So I believe the superintendent has indicated that she is expecting our board to be bringing forward some decisions related to that, and that data is gonna be crucial.
So how much do we get per pupil, or how much spending do we allot per pupil? So like so I know that we were at 11,000 or something, right? Is that, it's,
Yeah, it's on
I saw it someplace, but I didn't remember where it was.
next one, I think.
Alright, so it's $12,899.
12, 8, 9, 9, 25. Give me 1 second. 1, 2, 9 times. I know, I'm sorry.
I don't, just.
I know, it's a jarring experience for all of us. But I'm looking at the 3-year rolling average, which I think is on the previous slide.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the 22, 23, 24, 25. So 22 to 23 was a reduction of 34 FTE. 23 to 24 was a reduction of 38. 24 to 25 has been 129 reduction. In that reduction, are we talking 4K, 5K across the board?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest reduction we've seen since COVID. So it was a big reduction. That has me a little bit worried about declining
So
enrollment moving forward.
1.664 million.
And so you're right, it's gonna affect our revenue limit authority. What's happening, and it's happening in a lot of districts, but we're graduating larger senior classes that are getting replaced with smaller kindergarten classes. And when you look at that, you can see it moving through, like these smaller classes coming through and these bigger classes moving out. That's really what.
And
Can
what
you
I've,
give us a breakdown of the numbers in the classes?
Well, that's what the consultant's doing.
Well,
I
no,
cannot wait
correct.
for that
I mean,
presentation.
well, and what I
Ultimately,
have learned,
Ultimately, what we are looking at seeing is both district-wide, what our projections are. They're taking a look what our current classes are, what grades they're at. They're looking at those numbers, and they're also taking a look at it specific to individual buildings within the district.
right, and what I have learned over the last decade in the state of Wisconsin, on average, the percent of declining enrollment is about 7%. We're at about 4%. So while we are declining, we're not declining at the rate at which the average Wisconsin schools are declining. So I mean, it's a concern, but it's not 7%
We
concern.
don't know what will happen next year. It's possible that, I mean, we could bump back up a little bit. You never know. That's what happened to us after COVID. Took a big drop, we came back, and then we slowly declined. Tim, did you have
Yeah,
something?
I would think it'd be what you're saying, that scenario of larger graduating classes than smaller incoming can be easier to deal with. Cause if it's across the whole district evenly, I mean, if you've got, say, 400 kids coming in and 500 graduating, for example, it's a lot easier to just say, okay, we just don't need that many kindergarten classes.
Right.
That's a lot easier to address than, 5 kids per class across the district.
Right,
How do you adjust that?
right.
reasonably?
And don't forget, we are also digging into our open enrollment out and open enrollment in. And Sarah's planning to bring some information on what we've learned from families there as well, which was a little bit eye-opening. We thought students were leaving at different grade levels than what they really are. So what we're learning is students and families are not even stepping foot in our district. They're going elsewhere right from the start. So we need to do a better job of, engaging with those families from birth to age 5.
Okay, one more question. So we projected a levy rate of 6.96. I understand that while it's all guessing, what was our projection for next year? Because we projected 2 years with this past referendum.
Yeah.
Do we have some sort of
We
idea?
didn't, at the time of the referendum, we didn't project out 26, 27.
Okay.
So we only went to 25, 26. I do have some projections. Let's see, no, I don't. I was gonna say I have some in the budget book, but those are more, it's kind of a projection, but it's basically based on all performance for the general fund. any other funds. So I don't have a projection for that. I don't know what it's gonna be. My guess is that we're gonna kinda hang around that $7 amount. That's what I would think is gonna happen, because we're not gonna see as big of an increase in our levy next year as we're seeing this year, because the referendum is now included in that base revenue. We're also gonna get state aid on the money that we spend, so I'm suspecting that we're gonna get more state aid next year than what we got this year, even though it's being held at 0. And hopefully, when I think about all these school districts kind of reaching up and trying to grab state aid, hopefully we're spending a little more than them in some ways, so we can grab a little bit more. So that's what I'm hoping has happened, but I don't have a projection for you.
Well, and we will be in the second year of the biennium. And, you know, again, about what, three quarters or 4/5 of the increase is our second year of referendum coming in. But then the other portion really is the fact that the state did not allocate any additional dollars to state aid. And it's gonna be the same next year. I mean, we're in a biennium where we are not at this point anticipating additional state aid. We are, I mean, if we look at a little of a bright side, we are looking at, it's some certain, but we're looking at some additional dollars for special ed that the legislature did allocate that may at the end of the year be beneficial to us in terms of how much we're gonna have to transfer out from our general fund to state aid, but we don't know how much that's going to be, because again, it's some certain amount distributed across districts throughout the state.
Yeah,
That amount, got a guess of that amount?
We wouldn't see it until next year.
Would not see that yet.
That's until next year.
Other questions for Mike?
I would just like to ask again, like what Alex mentioned about a percentage of our budget that goes to salary and benefits compared to other schools. Also, it's been helpful in the past when you give us a comparison for our total cost per student, where we stand, state average or our 5 comparable schools. It's very helpful when we know where we stand with everybody else.
Sure, we can look into that. Mike would have to go into every one of those districts' revenue limit worksheet, which we can do to find those cost per student comparables. And then we'll look at the salary and benefits piece to see if we can't get additional information out.
Thank you.
And Mike, you'll be able to fairly soon, we will be able to get information from our surrounding districts about
Their tax rate.
their tax rate.
Yep.
So that might be helpful.
get it
to-
on Friday.
Right, so if the board could get that, so we have a sense where we are in relation to.
I will say we are probably gonna be higher than
Mhm.
our comparables
Because of the
for
referendum.
the referendum.
And a couple districts had debt that expired too, correct, Mike? Superintendent, I've heard a couple,
Marshfield had debt that expired last year,
okay,
so then they're working off a smaller number of these last 2 years, so that's kind of pushed their millage down. But they also passed a referendum, it was a building referendum, so.
right,
But that has a lesser impact.
sure. Well, Mike, I just wanna say thank you. I know this was your first budget hearing. He was very nervous and stressed about it, but he's done an incredible job. He put in a ton of time. Learning the new software program with the budget book was a different hitch that he had to learn, so he's done an incredible job. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Well done. It was only 22 minutes.
Oh.
Didn't quite get 20 minutes?
No, you didn't quite. It was well done.
It was perfect, Mike.
It's well done.
So are there any other questions from board members with respect to the proposed budget? Yes, sir.
I see that 12,899 per student. Is that truly what we spend per student?
Regular ed students, not
Okay.
not high needs special ed.
Okay.
That would be something different.
Because I thought sure, I heard a number of north of 15 that we were spending per student, and we were talking about that in one of our schools, that's how much gets spent.
Mike, do you wanna talk about that?
Yeah, so what you're looking at is revenue that we receive per student, but we do get revenue from other sources too. So when you combine all that, our spending per student is probably more than that, probably 15 is probably
Okay.
more accurate.
Out of curiosity, I see now the amount of money that we're losing from our budget for the vouchers has increased. Do you have any projection where that's gonna go?
It's gonna go up.
Well, alright, so first of all, it used to be 9%
It's now
of
uncapped,
enrollment.
yeah.
That was last year.
Yeah.
That's how they determine how many vouchers they can give out. They take 9% of your district's enrollment. That's how many they can give out. This year it was 10%. It went up by 5-6%. It all depends on grades. So K through 8 is less than 9 through 12, for example. I think it's set to expire the cap.
The
next
cap
year.
expires next year for next enrollment, so in February that there is no cap.
Yeah, so then they can give out unlimited vouchers.
Mhm.
There is a bill, I think, that's running through to try to stop that. But I don't
It's not
know
gonna
where it went. I doubt that it'll
It's not
come out, but.
Ted, I'm curious about this voucher information, and I've done some digging with the DPI and the Department of Revenue. Like, we're able to figure out where our kids are going, but we're not able to find out, or they won't release the kids that reside in your district and who they are or where they live. So I'm working with the Department of Public Instruction, the Department of Revenue, just for I've been asked the question and I can't really answer the question if I don't have the information. So more to come on that. Hopefully we'll be able to gather some more information.
Thank you.
And dollars per voucher have increased, and I
Correct.
But
think-
they're still less than what what we get, so just.
No, they're more.
They're
No,
more-
they
they're
are
more-
not.
Yep, they are.
They're not.
Actually,
It depends, you're right, it depends.
They're not.
So if you look at 9 through 12 for fiscal year 26, so that's this fiscal year. The voucher
10,
amount for
8,
9 through 12 is $13,371.
Can you say it again?
But-
I didn't hear.
It's $13,371. But the voucher amount, you're right, for K through 8 is $10,877, so it really depends on the grade. The special needs scholarship program voucher is $16,049, so just to give you an idea.
I think there's also a little bit of a misunderstanding in the public. I mean, when vouchers first came into Wisconsin, vouchers were directed towards people who couldn't afford another option for their child and wanted another option for their child. That's how the program was initially formed. But the way the program currently is, if you enroll a child as a young family in kindergarten, first grade, and you qualify for the voucher, you are then entitled to have that voucher for the remainder of the time that the child is in school, totally irrespective of what the family's financial picture is. And again, it's just sometimes the way things start out aren't necessarily the way things end up. And I personally, I mean, as a personal board member, I have a little bit of a struggle with that. I also, frankly, have a real struggle that the tax bills that people within our district receive do not tell residents of our district how much of that tax bill is going to pay for vouchers.
One thing to keep in mind though, some of these vouchers that are being paid for, these students may never have been in our school district.
Mhm.
They may have been in a private school district from day one. So it's not necessarily that they're leaving us to go there, you know, once they hit third grade or fourth grade or ninth grade, they may have always been in that school. So I think that's important to note as well.
Any other questions or comments with respect to the budget? Hearing none, we do have a motion on the floor because it's the budget. I'm going to ask Nicole to call the roll.
Ms. Mercer,
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski,
Yes.
Mr. Liebrick,
Yes.
Ms. Potter Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Summers,
Present.
Mr. Lepak,
Yes.
Ms. Bushman,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.